Hi, it's Hounsome. I am the father of 14 plus. So you see in the intro, you know that we have 14 children. And I had a friend call me up the other day and he says, I know you have 14 kids, but what does the plus mean? And so I said to him, well, we have the ones that have married our children, the in-laws that are our children. We have the boyfriends and girlfriends that are like they're like family to us, so they are a part of that family. And then we have the grandchildren as well. But there's even more to it than that. So, but to explain that to you, I'm going to go back and I'm going to tell you about my life, starting even as a young child. When I was about 5 or 6 years old, my parents started going to an evangelical church, and when we were there, they had you memorize Bible verses and do mission things, and it was a very interactive church, and but they're always after you to get saved. And in when I was about 8 years old, with a Sunday school teacher, I bowed my head and I confessed that I was a sinner and asked God to cleanse my heart. And afterwards, nothing really happened. And the next year, I did exactly the same thing, but I didn't sense that God was um, healing me, that He was changing my life. And so then I did it again when Billy Graham had a group of people who came into our area, and they had a revival going on there. And I went to that, and I was about 11 or 12 years old then, and I went forward and did the same thing, but nothing happened. Even at church, I was still living the same lifestyle. I was still lying. I was still stealing. All these things that came into my heart were still the part of who I was, but I didn't sense that I was saved. But if anybody asked me, I would say, yeah, I've been saved. But I came to the point of realizing that probably God doesn't really care about me a whole lot. My grandfather committed suicide, and we weren't 100% sure what had happened. He'd had a surgery on his brain about 6 months before that, but I guess he couldn't handle life anymore, and he brought it to an end. And we had the funeral, and after the funeral was over, we were having a get-together back at my grandmother's place. It was just the family that was there. And we get there, and my grandmother comes in. She's in a wheelchair. They bring her into the house, and she goes into the bedroom, and there was two people that walked in behind her. There was a short, fat man and a tall, skinny woman. And they went in. We didn't know if they were there to help put her to bed or what. So she had not been out of bed for 2 years before this. I'm not sure the reason why, but she was an invalid. And so when they were in there, they were doing whatever they needed to do, and then 20 minutes later, my grandmother walks out with her hands raised, saying, "I've been healed, I've been healed." And I had never seen anything like this ever happen before, and so I knew that God was real, because He was the only one that could do this for her or to her. But based on what had happened with me before, I didn't think He was interested in me. And so when I got into high school, I started to get involved in doing some drugs, and that really escalated once I got out of high school. So, I've done I have done a lot of chemicals. I've stuck needles in my arms a few times, which is a horrible thing to look back and to remember, but that's who I became, and I didn't care about people anymore. But I had all that teaching all of my life, so I probably had memorized like 2,000 Bible verses by that point. So one day I'm looking for somebody to smoke some drugs with. I'm driving down a street in Mississauga, and I couldn't find anybody around. There was nobody at home, and I go by this fast food outlet, and there's a car sitting there. I think it was a '69 Chevy was sitting there. And I thought, all right, that's a guy that had introduced me to some drug buddies. Let's go and talk to him. And I went over and knocked on the window, got in the car, and he had a Bible sitting on the dash. And so I got in, I'm talking with him, and there was a problem right then with what was with Iraq. United States was having some problems with Iraq. They had taken some people hostage. And so we would get talking about that, and I said, yeah, I know what you're going to say. He says, how do you know what I'm going to say? I said, we got a Bible sitting right there. share something from the Bible, aren't you? He goes, why? What does the Bible say? He says, I just started going to church about 3 weeks ago. So then I gave him I told him what the Bible said. And I got in the car and I left, and probably about 3 or 4 weeks later, it's a Sunday afternoon again, and I went around to my friend's place. There was nobody home. So I'm driving down the Dundas Street in Mississauga, and go by, and there's that car sitting there. So I went in and sat down, and we had another discussion. And so when I left there, I went back home, and I was high 24 hours a day. I'd get up in the morning. Before I smoked a cigarette, I'd smoke a joint. Yeah, but I kept on working throughout this whole time. And I was just thinking, okay, I'm just going to end it. Just drive my car into a bridge abutment, get over with quickly. And as I was thinking that, I kept having these thoughts about God. But I just said, well, he's not interested in me. And I had this discussion within my mind going on until about 4 o'clock in the morning. At 4 in the morning, I just got out on my knees. I said, God, if you want me, I'm all yours. And I went to sleep. And when I woke up in the morning, everything had changed. See, in the Bible, in Romans chapter 10, verse 9, it says, if we confess or say with our mouth that Jesus is our Lord, and we believe in our heart that God raised him from the dead, we shall be saved. So there's a belief in your heart. It's inside. You know God died out for my behalf. You don't have to proclaim it. You don't have to profess it. You don't have to say it. But you're supposed to say, Jesus is Lord. And that's what I did. I got on my knees. I said, if you want me, I'm all yours. So it was making him to be Lord of my life. And people have no concept of what it means to be Lord. If you go back even a few hundred years ago, and you owned a piece of property, and that property was near a castle, and that guy was lord over everything that went on the area. He was there to protect you. He was there to get money from when you sold crops, to support himself and to support the king. He was the lord of that area. And if you said to the Lord, oh, I don't think I want to go to war, oh Lord, I don't think I want to do this, you're putting your life in your hands, because he could have you executed for doing next to nothing. So I had given my life to God, and so what I did is I started going to work, and I was like, my whole psyche, everything in my mind had changed. It now became God focused, and I was talking to people. I was leading people to the Lord. And about 2 weeks later, I'm driving home from work one day, and this thought comes into my mind: go to this building on Cawthra Avenue. And I knew where it was, and there was a girl in there that her and I were like drug buddies. We smoked a lot of weed together. I thought, oh, I'll go over and see her. And so I went over. I went in the back door and up the hall, up 11 floors where she was, and I went up to her door and I knocked on the door. And usually she'd be home at that time of the day, but there was no answer. And I said, okay, Lord, where to? And he said, up 1 floor and across the hall. And so I climbed up 1 stairs, went across the hall, and there was a girl in there who was anorexic. And so something made her say, who's there? And I said, it's Phil. And she thought, oh, okay, well, we're going to get high today. So she opened up the door and I went in, and I just started to share what all the things that God had done in my life. And after about 35 minutes, she says, wow, she says, I want what you've got. Because to her, I was like the craziest guy that she knew. I was a beanpole. I was 6'3". I probably weighed like 135 pounds at the time. But I was just crazy. Like in my mind, I was just crazy. And that's how I was, she thought I was, something had happened strange to me, because she never really had a conversation with me before. But that day she gave her life to the Lord, not knowing that a couple of years later, she was going to marry me and become the mother of our 14 children. I really wanted to grow in my relationship with God, And so I started asking people, like, where can I get some more understanding? Where can I learn this? As well, they would say to me, well, why don't you try this Bible college, or why don't you try that Bible college? So we actually did drive around a bit. We went around and we looked at some colleges, and everywhere we went, God would just stop us from going. He would close the door. So we got in some travel. We went down to New Brunswick and things like that. But I didn't stop and ask God what I'm supposed to do. I tried to figure it out on my own, and so it led us. The outcome was right, but it led us to places that we should not have gone to. And we had a little boy at the time, and then one day when I found out my wife was pregnant with a second child, and we were all excited about it. And towards the end of the pregnancy, she went in for an ultrasound, and they told us that the baby was anencephalic. That meant there was no growth of the part of the brain, and that it was terminal. It probably wouldn't even be born alive. And my wife carried that baby for about 4 weeks. And after 4 weeks, he was born alive. We were in the hospital. We held him in our arms, and then he passed away. And we were praying for God to do a miracle, for God to restore him, to make him the man he was supposed to be. And yet it was such a hurtful time for us as well. We went through the pain of taking one of our children and burying them. And so we grew from that, and then after that we had our second boy was born, and he was not a replacement. He was another total being, another person. And then we had a little girl, so we had 3 children. We had 2 boys and a girl, and everybody said, oh, you must be done. And we weren't quite sure if we were done or not. We were thinking about it, and my wife went on a birth control pill, or she bought the birth control pill. But right around that time, the Lord said to me, he said, am I Lord of your life? I said, yes, you are. He says, what about the womb? And I thought, what do you mean, what about the womb? Like, we're going to let God decide how many kids we're going to have? And even though he is Lord of all, he's a loving, caring God, and he gives us also free choice. We had a choice to make whether we were going to listen to him or not. Now, he's not leading all of you to do that. That was just for us personally, because there's a lot of people that would really struggle, as we would have struggled with a lot of kids as well. The reason we were able to have so many kids is because I had grown up in a large family. We had foster new boards around, and I just love kids. I'm around kids all the time. Even today, if we go where there's a bunch of people with a bunch of kids, I'll be doing fun things with the kids. So we thought about it, and then we found out my wife was pregnant with child number 4. And it was during that time we decided, well, we'll just leave it up to God to decide how many kids we're going to have. Maybe we're going to have 6 or 7 kids one day. Like, that would be a huge, huge family. Not knowing that the Lord was going to bless us with 14 children. So all of that is to say that if you need as well, if you need somebody like a father type figure in your life, someone that you can send me some texts. If you can keep them short, and don't forget that I too have a family, I have a business, I have things that I'm doing. It sometimes can take me a while to answer them, or sometimes what I might do is take your questions and do a video log if it's one that I think will affect a lot of people. So I'm here to help you to be a father of you. You could be part of the plus. So father of 14 plus. So you just have yourself a great day, and keep looking to the Lord, because he's the one that has the answers for everything. Don't forget that you can subscribe to my channel, you can hit the like button, and you have a blessed day.